Hello and welcome to Dell's Gaming, and this is from the Depths designer and another part to the update sequence of episodes of video. And here I'm in version, let me just get it right, 2.7.3.6, and what I'm going to be looking at is CRAM cannons, because they have changed in the 2.7 release quite substantially to the previous CRAM cannon system. So I just want to go through some of the changes. This isn't a full in-depth of everything you can do, but I think I'll try and cover most of the differences and elements of the CRAM cannons. So first of all, menu. So the menu's changed a little bit, but everything is there as it was before. It's so all the parts connect as they were before. You start with a firing piece, and to that you can add your 6-way connectors, and onto that you can attach your various parts, such as the packers. The packers are what take items from the various pellets and then pack them into the cannon itself. So we can put in HE pellets and frag pellets, etc. Now the pellet system has changed significantly from what it was before, so we'll go through that. But also, one of the key elements is now, if I just add on this barrel, is, oops, if I make it face the correct way and bring up the HUD, you'll notice that the size of the gun is starting at 1 meter. So if we just go over here, you can see that this is now the smallest size of gun, with no gauge increases at all. This is a 1 meter barrel with 550 detection range. You can see with this very simple setup, which is one hardener, one HE and a compactor, which used to be ammo, is now just called a compactor. We'll go through that later. You can see we've got still a pretty good kinetic and explosive damage for an extremely simple gun, but quite a high reload time. If we add in 10 gauge increases, we head up to 1.5 meters, 1500 millimeters. We can see that the firepower's gone up. The AP is about the same because we've got the same number of hardeners. The explosive damage and kinetic damage has gone up because if you look at the top where it says packers ready, you got packed 262. So that's how many, what should we class it as, packets of pellets can be loaded. So this can contain 262 pellets per shell, and this holds 656. But you can notice this has got a reload time of 29.2, and this has a reload time of 70. So yeah, a lot more than double. But it's also, the firepower works out about the same. This has got firepower 0.18 and this has got 0.17, because fire rate, this is going to fire 2.5 shells for every shell of this, effectively. And then we go up to the maximum size, which is a 2 meter, 2000 millimeters, by putting 20 of these gauge increases. And again, the firepower is 0.18. Packed size is 1050 pellet packs. We'll call them pellet packs for the moment. And let's see, reload time 111 seconds. So we've gone up again. And where's that? Kinetic damage 7,300, explosive 7.9. So compare it to this, and yeah, it's significantly more, but that 111 seconds to reload. So anyway, one thing is, a good thing I found, I think, with this change is a problem I had with the previous guns. Was even if you made a simple gun, it was very restricted on range. Now with these, even the basic 1 meter gun, so fairly minimal size, you can see we're going out to quite a good range. That's gone out to let's see, 2000. We weren't really at our 45 degrees. That was a fairly low angle shot, for want of a better word. So that has helped. Previously, some of the, even after adding some gauge increases, you could only get it out to about 600 or 700 meters. Now all the guns can effectively fire out to a bit over 3000 meters, and it's all relevant to the shell speed. You'll notice down the bottom there is a shell speed 200 meters a second, which is the maximum speed you can have, and that is only changed by putting different barrels on, but otherwise they will all fire at approximately the same range. So as I say, 3,500, depends on a few variables, etc. Looks wise, now this has, because of this size change, there is some people's ships, especially people that were using these in wooden sailing ships, mimicking, 18th century type of ships, etc., where the looks have just gone wrong, because it now looks wrong, all of the power is wrong. But I think this is most probably better. I hated that short range. You had something which was significant size. It was like a 600mm gun. It could only go 500 or 600 meters range. It really annoyed me, basically. I wouldn't say really annoyed me, but it was a problem. Let me just get my character off of here for a second and we'll look at the next bit. So another bit that has changed is barrels. So if we take this gun as a basic, what we can add is various items. So if we just take a standard barrel and just add it on there, you'll notice that the shell speed's the same, and we have an accuracy 1.2 degrees, and each time we add a barrel the inaccuracy is reducing. A couple of other bits, if we go back as well, is so adding barrels, the basic barrel is reducing inaccuracy or increasing accuracy. The next bit is the barrel rotation speed. Now the barrel rotation speed is how quickly the barrel will point at where your target. So at the moment this is got 10 degrees a second. The more barrels we put in, well, you can see it's gone down to 0.3 a second. So trying to aim this is going to take some time. Understandable. The other starting point is sorry, let's go through then to increase that. Once you've added in made a barrel which is quite big, you want to make it turn a bit quicker. We can use the motor driven barrel. Now adding that in, you'll notice that the barrel rotation speed is going up quite nicely, so that is beneficial. Rotation speed has gone up and accuracy has also gone up, but not as much as if we were just using barrels. So it's adding rotation, but now we've got a fairly speedy gun. If I just hold that, you see that moves around for that same size sort of barrel, or even bigger, it's moving around. So the standard barrel also has a deflection of 35 degrees in all directions, and the motor barrel, if we go back here, does not modify that. In the previous version of CRAM, the motor barrel would have modified all of the angles for the cannon, so it would have made it had a wider and a higher elevation and a wider azimuth as well, or range of azimuth. Now to do that, we need to use the elevation barrels. So the elevation barrel, if we go back to here, we've got 35 degrees. Each time you add an elevation barrel, it adds 10 degrees to the elevation and reduces the azimuth. Down to 5 degrees is the minimum, and 75 degrees is the maximum elevation. So there is a limit. So it's fairly simple, 10 degrees each time. Other than that, it does increase the accuracy a little bit, but again, not as much as a standard barrel. And to adding 5 in, we go down to 32. If I add 5 of these in, goes down to 29. So it's not as many. So this only increases the elevation. So to get a long range gun, to be honest, you only need where are we, an elevation barrel to say put it up to 45 degrees, which would theoretically give you maximum range, and then say some motor driven barrels to give you a bit of speed, and then put some normal barrels in there to give you accuracy. So there we've got a gun that will fire 45 degrees up, azimuth 25 degrees, so that's not great. Now I don't see a way of making a gun barrel have a different azimuth, increase it. So if you wanted to create a casemate gun, so I know some people like to create guns which are fixed in the side, I've done it myself, and shoot out to the side at guns on the sea. Well, obviously this is going to have a very narrow azimuth, which is not good for a casemate gun. Well, one thing you could do is put your block on the sides. Let's give this a go. I'm going to need to have a block just there first, just to put it onto to connect, so it connects properly. Let's now try that again. So by putting the firing piece on its side, a couple of elevation barrels to give us a 55 degree elevation, but because it's on the side, the elevation effectively becomes your azimuth. So now if we have this gun, we can now have a nice casemated style of gun, but we would have a somewhat limited range because of the limited elevation on this gun. Would be the only downside. I wouldn't say the only downside, but would be a downside. It's not quite packed up, so I can't fire. It's taking a long time to fire on that one, 134 seconds. Oh well. Okay, we haven't finished. There is a couple of other barrels attachments left. One is the recoil. You'll notice this gun has a recoil of, where are we, is actually in that 750, and it's going up, and we can add a recoil suppression barrel, and I'm just going to change something. Oh no, we'll leave that for the moment. Now one problem here is we reduce the recoil, which is good, but each time we add one in, you'll notice the shell speed is going down as well. So if we put a bit to so we can reduce the recoil quite substantially. It's also increasing reducing inaccuracy, but that shell speed will mean that once this is loaded, let's just let this load up. So with that reduced shell speed at our limited elevation we've got effectively on this gun, we are somewhat reducing our range to 1200 meters. So without all of those recoil adjusters, obviously our recoil has gone up for the gun. If I get into a same point, well, our shell speed is a lot higher, and our range has now gone to about the 2000 meters. So reducing the recoil will can have a dramatic effect on your range of your shell. Final bit is flash suppression. Now the way the flash suppression works is you can see it's also reduced the shell speed quite significantly, but it also does reduce the detection range. So if we look at the detection range is 110 meters, and without that item it's 550 meters. So basically if a system has some sort of LAMs, then this will get through or get closer before the LAM system detects it. Downside is that shell speed, 170 meters. Now there's no benefit for adding multiple of these. You only need one of these on your gun, so there's no benefit of having multiple ones. But again, we're going to be reduced down to that 1200 meters. Now if you were to as an example, we put some recoil adjusters and also a flash suppressor on this, we're now down to 145 meters, which I'm expecting to be pretty low range. Effectively everything else the same. Let's see how far this goes. Yeah, 1100 meters. So but it would be a very stealthy shot, and you wouldn't have to worry about your ship turning over because of the recoil, at least with this particular gun. So that's the barrels. So they have changed. In general, it makes sense. And you can use them. I would say that mostly we've got an elevation barrel, maybe the pivot barrel. I would think that one needs to be, the motor driven barrel needs to change, because not change, I mean maybe the name would be my only suggestion, because it's not necessarily, it does make it pivot quicker, but maybe there's a better name for it, and maybe create a pivot barrel which does the same as the elevation but adds 5 in both directions. Maybe, I don't know, people can debate. I mean, at least you can change this to go sideways. If you do want a gun which has got a good wide angle, you do have a choice. And with turrets, you can create a turret that's got that deals with your elevation, your azimuth anyway, and just have it with elevation. I think that's why they've done this. They've said, well, most people just want an elevation to get up to 45 degrees or higher for high angle, but most of the time they just want it to be on a turret, and that would worry about the azimuth, which is fair play. So next is the configuration of CRAM cannons, which has changed somewhat from previous systems where previous versions where prior to this you would define your gun fairly much by the blocks that made up the gun. Now there is a new menu. So if we bring up the properties, you'll notice under CRAM settings there is this new UI. So going down from the top, we've got minimum packing. Now the packing time is the time, how long the gun spends for packing the shell. So when we looked back at one of these previous guns, you see it's got capacity of 656. So how long did it take to pack that gun up? I.e., in this one we have a where are we? A reload time of 332 seconds in this particular 100% packing. So by defining this to be lower, you could say only go to 20%. So at 20% packing, this gun would be ready to fire if there was a target, or only fire once it gets to 100%. So you can define, do you want this to be a faster firing gun when the opportunity comes along, or wait until you've got the maximum possible penetration HE pellets packed, in the gun. May be useful in certain designs. I've got to say one thing, I wish that there was a control in the ACB to set that, because then what you could do is small ships set the packing at say 20%, fast firing gun but fairly low power. If a vehicle was over a certain volume, i.e. a big ship, go to maximum packing to get the maximum penetration from your shells. There isn't one at this moment, but anyone listening, that would be a nice thing to have. I suppose I should put it up on the bug tracker as a request. Okay, going through that menu one more time. So muzzle velocity, again 200 maximum. I could set my muzzle velocity to be low. Why would I do that? Mortars especially, where 200 meters they're firing straight into space, you may want to set that lower so that at their lower velocities they arc down and do the mortar style of shot. So the mortar style shot is when they are firing at a high angle. So you have your firing piece, you might for instance have it pointing directly up. So if I just create something here, bear with me a second, we'll create one which is like that, and then put that on the end. There we go, 45. It might be as simple as something like, there we go, and we just need to pack some ammo in that, so I'll just go with a standard something nice and simple, nothing. This would now only fire high. So under the CRAM settings, we might, let's just see if we can fire this one out. We're going to do this all as we go along. Let's just see where this one ends up. We'll set it so that the packing time is pretty quick. So when you put 10% on there, because one thing I noticed, even if you reduce the packing time, the basic speed etc of the shell does not change. So if we now go to number 5 and fire at something, say about there, let's just get it about ready. We'll fire fairly much straight up, and that's going up and up and up, and I don't think that's going to come down, because yes, we are into space, so that'd be no good. So let's reduce the power of it. So what if we let's really reduce the power of it. Obviously this is too much, but it's all fun. So where are we? Come on, aim. Let's see how far. where did that go? Not very far at all, actually. It hardly came out the gun. So yeah, but it's showing the setting. Obviously you want to, you'll set that depending on what you actually want to have the gun to fire like. If we come on, load. There we have a nice little 60 meters a second. It's going up nicely and then comes down again. Obviously doesn't have a lot of range, but it means if you want to fire at something close, you can change that value to get the right, enough to get the range you want, with low enough you don't go into space. So that's one way to set. You could create the mortar. Let me just clean that up. So next on our menu is maximum gauge. If for some reason you wanted to ensure that the gauge does not go over a certain height, or wanted to make it very finely tuned rather than the basically at the moment it goes up in, I think it's about 5 centimeter gaps each time you add a gauge increaser. If you wanted to for some reason make that more defined, you can do in that particular item, particular menu. Right, the firing arc. So this only low, prefer high, only high, direct line. So these again partially useful for mortars, but generally it's the preference of how you want the gun to shoot. If you think of it as 45 degrees elevations from the actual straight at the target. So only low means only fire the gun if you've got a shot which is sort of at it, but you've worked out the right range by elevating the gun. Prefer low means I will fire directly at the target in that elevation, but if for some reason I can't reach it because of that, I'm trying to think of the reason, like the gun is pointed up, then I will try to put a high arcing shot in there. Next one, opposite, prefer the high arcing shot but go low if that doesn't work, and then only high. This would be suitable for mortars, so mortars only shoot using a high arc to the target. Direct line. Now direct line, that's a new one. So basically always point at the target. Interesting one. This could be useful for very close range guns, or where maybe you're using it to target for some other reason, but yeah, I mean that could be good for a gun broadside where you don't want to aim at a particular block of the ship, just aim generally at the ship, have quite a wide what should we say, required accuracy, and that way you'd get a massive broadside just aimed at roughly in the direction of the ship. Again, could be good for broadside type guns in my estimation. Right, next is the interesting new part, which is the automatic packer refit. Now this is where previously we would have to, in the build menu, go and check whether you wanted HE, frag, EMP or hardness, and then how much ammo. You now have you can now create them all using the payload compactor. You can still add those in individually and define it manually, but if you just add in lots of payload compactor onto here, so here we've got 618. I can now, under these 5 settings, define how many of them become a particular type. Now what it will do is it will try to make adjust all of the compactors to the various types to fulfill your percentage requirements. Now it may modify that a little bit, because depending on how many you've got, you might not get the exact breakdown you want, but it will get close. So if we said, and also how these changed, these have changed a little bit, primarily the payload compactor. But let's just have a look. First of all, if I set 100% payloader, hardener and HE and click apply to cannon, you'll notice now that these have all changed. So we've got 6 payload, 6 hardener and 6 explosive, because it's shared it out quite nicely between the 3. Now let's say we wanted to have some EMP, not so much HE. I could take that, say, down to 50 and put this up to 50 and apply, and we should now have some EMP on the end. That's cool. Now we'll change it. Say I wanted some frag, but I haven't really worked it out, so I've just dragged it somewhere. Click apply, and you'll notice that these have sort of been changed around to roughly fit as close as what I selected. So it changed these to reduce the 50, and it also added the fragmentation angle here, so we can define what is the fragment angle for the frags that come out. And we should have now some frag on here somewhere, EMP, and oh yeah, we got a frag one on the end, so it's giving us 1 frag and EMP. So yeah, you can change these quite happily. Now, one change, the compactors. Now these in the previous one defined how much ammo was on your gun. Now all ammo for loading the shells comes from your ship's ammo supply. Doesn't store any locally. And the compactor, if you look at the moment on our gun, we have a a packed size of 325. If I change the percentage of payload compactors to 50, we'll apply to cannon, so it went to 57, you'll notice that the packed is now 300 from where it was before, so it's got less capacity. If I put that back up to 100 again, it's gone back, it's at 325. Now the so it has changed the packed value. It's not making a big effect on this small 1 meter gun. The bigger the shell, the larger this potential packed value is, and therefore the bigger change will be. Well, I'll show it on the bigger gun over here in a second. The other bit on this is that it has an effect on the reload rate. So we've got reload time is 30 seconds on here. If I now take it down, we'll take it down significantly to 10%, or so we should only got 1 there now, and we've got 262, and our reload time is 18.4, so it is quicker to reload because we've got less to pack. We're only going up to 262 instead of 325, so it's gonna be less packing required. So yeah, you can change your fire rate by how much is packed in the gun. I'll show it on this. This is a much larger gun, as you can see here. A lot more items on here. I would say this is ultimate, but this is a what we got, 2 meter gun. So here we've got, let's see, our CRAM setting at the moment is 100 on the payload compactor, and our settings are, let's see, 41.6 reload time, and we've got 3,350 of packed items. If we go into the menu now and then take that down to 50% and apply that to the cannon, we've now gone down to 2,400 and our reload time is 27. 0.24. Other items, let's just let it load up so we can compare. So at full load, our kinetic damage is 16,354 at 37.5 armor piercing. If I now change that compactor back up again, so it will effectively reduce how many hardener pellets there are, and I'll just let it fully pack up. So at full pack, we're now got up to 22,809 kinetic damage with a 37.4 armor piercing, and reload time is 41. So yeah, this is having a on this much larger gun, you can see it having a more dramatic effect on how the gun is basically loaded and how much packing is available in the shell. The other part then is just quickly on the firing of the gun. As I said, if we have a look on the right hand side where we got the ammo count, which is at 134.32, and when I fire, once it starts to reload the gun, which is going to start loading now, we can notice that the ammo is being depleted on the gun. So we are loading effectively from the ship's ammo supply rather than what is contained in the gun. Now, anyone can correct me on that if these do have some sort of storage capacity once you're at zero ammo on your ship, but it seems to be working that way. I can't see anything that says in the menu or anywhere else that this has any ammo storage associated with it. It doesn't seem to suggest that we have a ammo capacity within the gun. It seems to be purely loading from the ship. Last bit then is comparing it to an APS gun. So here we've got a simple turret. Let's say this was going to be a small cruiser sort of turret, maybe something like that, so nothing too massive. So we've got this particular turret size I've allocated, which is a 3x3 below deck and about 3 back from the front is my size available, and I've created this little CRAM cannon here, which has got a nice little fairly simple stats. I've reduced the payload compactor a little bit on this just to increase the firing rate a little bit, so we've still got a reload rate of 26.6, but we've got quite a good kinetic damage of 51 AP and 6,000 with explosive damage of 4,500, 12.5 meter radius, so it's quite good. Now the main bit is the firepower is 2.37. Now that's not a per shell firepower, that is the firepower at this particular reload rate, or rounds per minute. What it's going to put out per second effectively is 2.37 firepower, and comparing that to an APS gun. Now I've fitted an APS gun which is in the same size turret, so that's said I'm going to have a 2 meter shell, so that's defined my shell, which it's defined the 236mm here because that fitted into the 2 meter shell without doing anything too fancy, and the shell itself at 236mm, fairly simple, armor piercing, solid HE, penetration depth, so sort of similar shell to the CRAM, because I did put a penetration depth fuse on that as well. And you'll notice armor piercing not quite as high, kinetic damage obviously not as high, and the explosive damage a lot less than was on the other gun, but this has 11 RPM, which is basically 5.44 seconds to reload as opposed to 26. So this is going to fire 5 times faster. So the firepower on this is 2.4, which is basically almost the same as the CRAM cannon over there. Cost wise, if I just bring up the sub objects, so the CRAM cannon, when it was saved as a sub object, that basically had a cost of about 3,200 materials, and the test APS had 3,500. So these are about equal in cost on the gun, or without anything extra. Obviously you would put some armor on this or your turret, but excluding that, just the gun components. Other differences, this has a maximum velocity of 200 milliliters a second and will go about to the 3,500 meters range. This has a velocity of 759 meters and would go out to 12,000 meters, so you know, significantly longer. We only need 5,000 meters because that's the range of the AI, so well within range. That higher velocity though will make this gun much better against faster flying objects, airships, planes, fast ships. The CRAM cannon will not be as good in that particular environment, but it's got significantly higher armor piercing. So basically it comes down to, when this hits, it makes things go boom. This will keep on hitting you and effectively peck away at your surface until you go boom. So they do fire in a different way. Now I have done some tests with this before, but we'll just bring in something to act as a target and a simple marauder. And you can see immediately the differences in fire rates between these two guns. The CRAM is still loading and still loading, and the APS gun is having is firing basically, and the CRAM cannon is still loading. It's almost there, and fire. So obviously on the other end, on the receiving end, we have the APS gun is basically making holes in the front of this marauder. It's going to be consistently hitting it. It's not the most accurate gun, so sometimes it's going to miss, but it's that low angle. You can see it's constantly taking out a block or two, and eventually would make its way through and hit something of more vital to the ship. One interesting idea with the APS is the APS would be good to basically slow down some of the faster ships, or cause them to go into the water if they're a flyer, and then that's when hopefully the APS gun would get a good opportunity to launch at the target. If we can get a hit on this, yeah, it takes more blocks off, let's put it that way. Okay, it hit a fairly vulnerable part, but it's certainly taking more of the ship out when it does hit. But yeah, the fire rate is significantly down. So after doing a number of tests against lots of different easy and regular based ships, just using these guns, we can compare under the stats is the materials destroyed. So here we got 109,000 materials have been destroyed, so it's got a rate of 1.8 basically for its ammo, if we're only looking at ammo expenditure. So that's the efficiency of the gun. Now the CRAM cannon has actually destroyed less, but it used less ammo, so it actually got a 2.5, a better ratio for the amount of ammo it expended, but it actually has destroyed less, and that's because it's missed more, but when it hits big. For want of a better word. Which is better? They've both got different situations. If something is slow, the CRAM, as I say, will make it go boom, which is good. If it's fast, then the APS gun has a chance of destroying it, or has a chance of hitting it at least, because it's going to have a higher fire rate and a good chance of hit with that high velocity. So they both have their situations. I mean, to be honest, a mixture of both is good. APS, hopefully, if it hits a propulsion, knocks them into the water, makes them go slow, whatever the case may be, then the CRAM cannon comes along and blows them up. So, but generally, cost-wise, you can make sort of equally efficient guns, relatively equal. They're not exactly equal, they've still got differences, so it is very much what you're against. In the campaign, Deepwater Guard and the Onyx Watch are perfect targets for the CRAM cannons. When you've got something like the White Flares, Lightning Hoods, possibly some of the faster ships of Steel Striders, the small some of the other small ships, then your APS would be better if you haven't even gone to lasers at that point. But the CRAM cannons against some of the bigger ships of Lightning Hoods and or White Flares, or even the Steel Striders, if you can knock them down, slow them down, or the big ships, then the CRAM cannon would, I think, be potentially useful, but it would be useless against a lot of their quick flyers. But just to finish this off, I think they both fill a niche in your armory or against different opponents, and can be used in different ways. Yeah, I quite like them. I haven't played with the mortars myself. Mortars hasn't been something I've really mucked around with, but I do like the idea of the high arcing mortars. The only other bit I did not look at, because it hasn't really changed too much, is in its usage, is the bomb chute. Under the CRAM cannons you still have the, wherever it's gone to, I've lost it now, the bomb chute here, which can be used in flyers, especially, is where it's been used to launch a nice big CRAM cannon down at your target. I think this is more viable than it used to be now, with your size of your CRAM cannon now starting at 1 meter. It means even a very small, if I just build something again very quickly, so just a single firing piece with a bomb chute on the end, and we'll just add a packer on the end with, say, on payload HE and an AP, so that's a very small bomb, and that's, yeah, once it's packed up, it's going to take a while to pack up, but once that's packed up, that will provide quite a good little simple bomb, whereas before you'd have to have quite a few gauge increases to make this a viable bomb. This would, yeah, I think would be potentially a good starting bomb, small bomb still, but with the accuracy of the bomb chute and its wide range, yeah, I think that would work nicely at the very beginning as a simple small bomber, and I might think to use that actually in some bombing planes. Try this, lots of little small CRAM bombs rather than one big one. Downside, that reload time, 134 seconds to 134 seconds to reload. I think that would need to be changed a little bit somehow. Certainly not great. That's going to need some more packers on there than that, I reckon. Let's just increase that a little bit, although now I'm getting away from the very concept, which is having a fast packing gun. 55 seconds to load, and it's actually already packed. So kinetic damage 1.6k, explosive damage 2.8 every 55 seconds. That's not too bad now, is it? Really? I think that would do a nice bit of damage. Or we could, obviously, how many packers do you want on this? Anyway, yeah, I think it is viable. It hasn't changed too much in that regard. I think that's it. Can't see anything else I have changed. Fuses are still the same. Laser targeter is still the same. Haven't really touched those in any way at this time. As always, if you think I did miss something about CRAM cannons, leave a comment down below telling me where I was wrong, or where I have got things wrong. If anyone can confirm the factor about ammo being taken from the ship rather than being stored in compactors, please leave a comment down below, because I believe I am correct, but I can't see anything one way or another to show that is incorrect. Click a like if you want me to look at anything more. I don't think there is anything else which has substantially changed among the via the update, apart from campaign, which we would get into next. As far as I can tell, everything is similar, nothing major. There may be some changes. I'm still waiting for the ammo factory to come in. At the moment we still have the ammo processor, which it has changed, I think, its cost and how much power it uses, etc. But otherwise it's still waiting for the ammo factory to be the main ammo producer at this time. Yeah, and once again, click the like, leave any comments, but above all, keep playing the game and have fun.